Hello, this is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from beautiful Florida. And today our question comes to us from Elizabeth. And Elizabeth has this question. What is the average period of time before a person who has died will reincarnate? And she specifies that she's asking because she had a friend who crossed into spirit some 5 years ago, and she's wondering if they would have reincarnated by now. And my answer to this is, firstly, that there really is not an average. I think it's a very individual thing, as most things are. I think it depends on when the soul is ready. I think it depends on what the soul's lessons are. And I think it depends on how much healing the soul has to do before the next incarnation can go forward. And if you do much work with past lives, you'll have encountered people who have reincarnated very quickly and people who've taken a long time to reincarnate. So this is the first answer to the question. It's the simpler of the two answers I'm going to give, and it's the more relevant to what's actually being asked, which, again, the answer is, there's no average, there's no one answer. It's individual to the needs of the soul. Having said that, there is a second answer that's rather more complex, and we talk about it in greater detail in our third degree materials. But I'll try to talk about it in some detail here. And that is that the soul is not as simple as people sometimes think it is. I think that many people think of their soul as being just the same as their conscious mind, but it is not. The soul is much more than this. And if you consider the things that come to you in dreams, the things that you can do psychically, the things that you encounter in doing shadow work, you will realize there's much more in your soul than just your consciousness. And when we talk about incarnation, we're talking about the level of the soul. And the first thing that's relevant to this is that time, as we know it in this world, is not the same as time as it exists in the spirit world, if in fact it exists there at all. And many people believe that it does not exist there in any form. But if we assume that it does, there is a general opinion that it is different from our experience of time. And therefore, when we ask questions about time that involve the soul, there's a certain extent to which it's not really relevant. The soul is not running on our time, and its experiences are different. Add to this teachings about probability, about multiple dimensions, and multiple expressions of the soul, and the answer becomes rather different from the simple answer I gave at first. And what I would say is that the nature of the soul and the nature of reality is such that in fact a soul can have multiple incarnations running at once, and most of them do. And this may not be simultaneously to the soul, but it is simultaneously in our world, and as we experience it. And we talk about this again in the third degree materials. So how long does it take for a soul to reincarnate? It isn't really a relevant question in terms of the soul itself. It's relevant in terms of our experience. But going back to that first question about the friend who had crossed into spirit, they could incarnate at any time, including before their physical death, and any number of variations. And this is what I would consider a higher teaching. There's a lot more to it than what I'm going into here. But in essence, what it comes down to is it's just not that simple, because the soul is much more complex than our conscious mind. It's not a single linear experience. It branches out in many directions, as does reality itself. So when we talk about multiple time streams, when we talk about dimensionality, you don't really have to think very long before you realize, again, it's just not that simple. And if you wanted to learn more about this, I would recommend my third degree book, or perhaps looking into the Corellian world walkers who explore it in much more depth. So that would be my answer. I hope you find it helpful, and until next time, may you blessed be. The Tarot of Hecate. My 100-card tarot deck, 30 years in the making, finally available to you from witchschoolstore.com. Check out a copy today.